Hi.
Hi. We have all ages.
Hey guys.
No, this is
Hi.
Hi. Hi from Germany.
Hi.
Hello.
Hello. Indonesians in one go. Look at that. All the Indonesians in one picture. Oh,
شفت روي؟
marvelous. Marvelous, everybody. So we're going to start in about 30 seconds. We're just letting people sign in here. And we can, everyone get in a wave. Everybody is, apart from Michael and myself, are on mute. So that's to make this more workable for everybody. Ah, I see Bandung. The Indonesians from Bandung are here. Give them a wave. That's Irene Efren. Marvelous.
Can they see me? Can they see me, Adam?
If well, I want to see a thumbs up for anybody who can see and hear our speaker, Michael. Yes? I see thumbs up.
Let's just stop it.
I see double thumbs up in some cases. How fabulous. All right, people. Well, I know that more are going to join us as we go along, but it's 9 a.m. here in on the Eastern Seaboard of the
London,
United
BBC.
States. That's right. London, Beirut, and Vietnam. Welcome. Good morning. Good evening, Vietnam. So, folks, more and more people are coming. That's marvelous. Marvelous. Well, it's not a surprise because it is a great honor to have a webinar today with Michael Cooley, who is one of CELA's best friends institutionally and personally, and of course, a great friend to our leadership community. I see we have people from the Middle East. We have people from the United States, from CELA as well. Marvelous. So, folks, we're going to get started. And the ground rules for those of you who have joined a CELA webinar before are very simple. To make this workable, Michael and I are the only people whose voices you will hear. You can intervene by showing your face, by waving, by shouting. Aisha, I hear somebody heavy breathing. That may be Armil, possibly. So this is how we're going to work it. Our subject today is Beyond Strategy. We're going to allow Armil. I think that might be.
Somebody
Aisha,
needs to mute.
somebody needs to mute Aisha, if you can help us with that. We're going to invite Michael to start off with comments for about 20 or 25 minutes. After that, we're going to have questions. Questions, please send to me by the chat, either group chat or private chat. I hope you know how to do that. The chat is on the bottom. I will gather up questions. I will inject them into the conversation if necessary as Michael is speaking, or else we'll start them about 20, 25 minutes in. So without much more ado, this is my copy of Michael Cooley's latest book, Beyond Strategy, which is the basis for our conversation today. Available in bookstores worldwide. Look for Black and Orange. Black and Orange means Michael is back. I'm going to start off by asking you this, Michael, and then I'm going to kick it off with a question. Because all of us today are interested in leadership. We are a community of young and not so young leaders. And this is a community of leadership academies. Strategy, as you know, is often more associated with the tactical and the technical rather than leadership. However, your book makes a powerful pitch for the fact that integrated strategy must be integrated with leadership. Why is that so? Why do leaders need a strategy? And why can't we just wing it without a strategy? Would you start off with that?
Okay, number one, hello everybody. It's so wonderful now as we do this. It's bringing up all the memories, the beautiful memories that I have with CELA. I don't know how many people are there from CELA and MELA, but this is a CELA thing, and I have lots of fond memories of CELA. And now I see you, Adam. You were, one of the hearts. CELA has many hearts. So one of the hearts, and Aisha and Anand and Anu. So all this is coming up, and I'm also excited about the next academy. that will be held in Sri Lanka. It's always a joy to be with this beautiful community of people. Asia is special. Okay, so why this book? Why Beyond Leadership? Now, sorry, Beyond Strategy. Now, strategy is fine. That's the word. Strategy is fine, but the word beyond, that's the main one. That's the one is in bold. Because in my corporate life, I spent like 30 years in the corporate life. And I also spent a number of years, more than 10, 15 years, maybe in the world of journalism, writing about politics, international politics, and newsmakers and how things happen. Strategy has always been an important subject, especially in the corporate world, and it has become a buzzword. And to the extent that I developed some kind of a negative reaction to this word, because it has been severely abused, especially in meetings. So you're in the corporate world and you attend like hundreds of meetings every year, if not more. This word keeps coming up in many times without enough meat, without enough substance. So that made me more and more intrigued about the subject. And I felt how much people have been, are intimidated, and how people use this word maybe in the wrong place or without even knowing what it means. And I thought maybe this subject has to be studied. So I started studying the subject, and I spent years and years reading books about strategy. I even had the honor of sitting at the feet of some of the greatest minds of this, including Michael Porter at the Harvard Business School. I took 3 or 4 courses with him, and then I worked with him as an associate in his think tank of strategy and competitiveness. And also I did the same with Ronald Heifetz, who is one of the thought leaders in leadership in the Kennedy School of Government of Harvard. So I tried to stay in that space for as much as I can to learn more about the subject. It is out of that came the word beyond, because I saw that, okay, strategy is a great thing, but there's something beyond strategy that we think about, something that we should put strategy in context, something that should highlight why should we talk about strategy in the first place. So let me start with the context of strategy so that we put everything in perspective. Let me also say that when I'm talking about strategy, I am not only talking about business. So everything I talk about, I'm talking about life. That's where the word beyond comes. I'm talking about life in general. I'm talking about the relationships. I'm talking about business. I'm talking about the nature of being itself. So strategy, in my perspective, is something that fits there. So don't just think about your business. Expand this horizon to include life and every aspect that relates to life. So what's the context strategy? Number one, we have been bombarded recently by the concept of happiness, by the concept of life is beautiful, by the concept of the self-esteem. Everybody, people are great. Everything is great. If you just look at what goes on social media and see how people are continuously being pumped entrepreneurship, things are fine. People take pictures with their private jets, and life is beautiful, and the whole thing. So what I want to bring to the picture is something that's completely different. What I want to say is that in my observation is that the nature of life is completely different than what have been portrayed over the recent years and decades, especially as we caught up with the wave of entrepreneurship and business and making easy money and happiness. The nature of life is suffering. The nature of life is pain. The nature of life is sometimes malevolence. The nature of life is hardships. Life is very hard. Life is beautiful, can be beautiful sometimes, but it's not as simple as this sounds. And whoever says, the purpose of life is to be happy, and says this taking this lightly, I think there's some kind of oversimplifying things, or even siding on the side, going onto the side of illusion and even being delusional. If you just look at your life if each of us, you and me and everybody else, just look deep into your life and see the kind of difficulties and challenges that you encounter from the time you wake up. In fact, I don't want to say it till the time you sleep, because they even chase you in your nightmares, right? So, and even when you sleep, your subconscious reminding you of the different challenges that we face, whether it is sickness in your personal health, whether sickness is somebody around you, or you lose somebody you love, or the economy is in a bad situation, or the country, or somebody somewhere around you, if not you yourself, are engaged in a battle of dealing with the difficulty and the suffering of life. Is my audio clear? Okay, so as I said, the nature of life is suffering. It's hard. You don't want to believe that. Go and spend one night in the jungle and see what would nature teach you. The second point I want to say is the nature of business is also hard. I laugh and I smile when I see things advertised on the social media, especially by people who are sitting in their private jets and selling people the illusions that if they read their book or they attend their they listen to their 3-hour talk or attend to their 3-day seminar, then having a private jet is easily within reach. It doesn't work like this. Business is hard. Starting a business is hard. Being an entrepreneur is hard. Maintaining a business, growing business is hard. Money doesn't grow on trees. Competition is available. 7.5 billion people are working hard every day to capture the same opportunities that you are trying to capture. So in general, life is hard and business is hard. On top of that, let me add one more dimension, is that we have limited resources. In life, we have limited resources. We live for maximum 70, 80, 90 years. If you're lucky, you do that. And no matter how long your life is, you still have limited resources. There's so many places that you can visit. There's so many places you can go. You're limited by your height, by your health, by your weight, by your mental capacity, by whatever makes you a defined human being. At the same time, business, the world of business also is limited, because nobody has unlimited budget. Nobody has unlimited resources. It is not that you can do anything that you want at any time without giving careful consideration into this. So because this is the context of what we're dealing with, this is the beyond strategy aspect, is that life is hard. It cannot be taken lightly. If you take life lightly, life will break you. Number one, business is hard. It cannot be taken lightly. If you take business lightly, it will break you. So this is one fact. The second fact is I want to highlight is to take a moment and think about what is the nature of our reality, our current reality, your current reality, and my current reality, in the context that life is hard, full of suffering, is short, is full of pain, and full of challenges. Of course, it's dotted with happy moments. If you have that, you're lucky. Of course, we have to be grateful and for the peaceful moment that we get from time to time. Of course, there's so many reasons to feel gratitude. Of course, that's also the case. But the default nature of life, as you said, because it's hard, because business is hard, we take that on a personal level and we ask ourselves, what is the nature of our reality, our current reality? Where do we stand in the reality that life is hard and business is hard? Are we ready? Are you ready to handle the nature of life as it is? Are you ready to handle the nature of business as it is? Are you ready? How are you dealing with your current challenges? How ready are you for whatever it's coming? I look at life sometimes like an ocean. Sometimes, very rarely, it's quiet. But often the natural condition of an ocean is waves. But from time to time, in fact, every year, you get some seasons that are very stormy, and sometimes you get also tsunamis. So my question, if you look at the nature of your reality now, on the personal level, on the family level, on the relational level, right, your relationships, your health, whatever constitute the universe of your life, right? The same thing to your business. If you look at the nature of your business now, your relationship with your staff, the capital that you have, your reputation, the product and services, your relationship with your competitors, with the market, the understanding of the the macroeconomics. Where do you stand compared to all that? What's the nature of your reality? So if you're doing great, then I don't think that if that's the situation, I don't think that came out of nowhere. I'm sure there are things that happened, lots of thinking has happened, lots of effort has happened, so that you have maintained, if that's the case, a situation where you're handling all the the difficulties of life and the challenges of business in a functional way, and you're cruising, and you're even creating, you're capturing every moment of happiness and success, and you keep creating just one story of happiness and success after the other. You really have succeeded in making life beautiful. If that's the case, I don't think this has come out of a coincidence. I'm sure to create such a reality, if that's your reality, considerable thinking and planning, whether you call it a strategy or not, considerable level of deep strategic thinking has happened, because I'm sure it did not happen for no reason. If that's not the case, if your reality was not the same, not as I described to begin with, if your reality has elements of anxiety, if your reality has elements of stress, if your reality has elements of challenges, right? And you are serious about it, then I think this seriousness that involves handling this reality, dealing with this reality in the context that I've talked about, which is the difficulty of life and difficulty of business and the difficulty of survival and growth, then if that's the case, then we have to decide, what do you want to do with this? Are you going to stay passive? Are you going to remain passive and let life toss you from one side to another? Or are you going to just wait for the lottery to be won? Or are you going to wait for good luck to dawn on you? Or you're going to do something about it? If you're going to wait, then good luck. If your best strategy is luck and lottery, then good luck for you. I mean, there's nothing like I can tell you. I think life alone will take care of teaching all of us a lesson if we have that kind of attitude. But if we're realistic about life and business, and if we have made a decision that no, we have to be strong enough to be able to deal with the nature of life and the nature of being, and not only that, we have to be strong enough to overcome, right, the default nature of life and being, and the default nature of this of suffering and pain and challenges, overcome them, and then turn these moments into opportunities, and then create moments of happiness, and create moments of success, and make life really beautiful for as much as we can. Then we have to think in terms of strategy, because that will not come by itself. So strategy, that's why I called it beyond strategy. Beyond strategy means the subject of strategy is beyond its tactical nature. This is not just about having a smart plan. This is about something much bigger, because you can't have a million strategy. Strategy is sort of the grand choices, the big choices, the grand mega roadmap that you decide to take in the journey of life that is by default limited and hard. It is the grand business plan, it's the grand choices that you have to take to make the roadmap in the journey of the difficult journey of creating and nurturing and growing a successful business in a very challenging and tough business environment. So strategy is important because it fits in that context, because I don't see how anybody can survive and handle the difficult nature of life and business, right? And I know some of you think I'm being pessimistic. You might be right. The way I see it, what life has taught me is, and I think if anybody just looks to his life in a realistic way, and your career path, your family issues, your personal issues, whatever your environment, your relationships, I think you can see that it's not very far from maybe your reality as well. So to handle this kind of thing, this kind of reality, this kind of being, you need to think of strategy. That's why strategy is a very serious business. It's a very serious business. It's not a tactical thing. The reason I say that because I don't think people spend enough time to really work on designing their journey of survival and growth in life, while considering that this is not going to be an easy journey. Organizations in the same way, they look at it sometimes from a tactical point of view, and they invite big companies, like the big six of the consultants and the rest, to come to them and organize and design some strategy, and they give them a nice PowerPoint presentation. I used to have one that cost me $1 million in my corporate life. It did nothing but collect dust, right? And then they go, right, without giving it enough weight. When we talk about strategy, we're actually talking about the grand choices that we decided to make, right, so that we can face the reality and the nature of life, and the reality of nature of doing and building and constructing and maintaining and growing a successful business. So that's why strategy is so important. You don't have a strategy, then you are more on the defensive or on the passive level, or you're just surrendering to the forces of chaos, and you're being tossed from one place to another, being reactive and just staying in a crisis mode, either at home or your own personal life, or in an organization. Now, to develop a strategy, and I'm not going to expand so much on that. I just give you the headlines. There are some fundamental steps that have to be done to develop strategy. Number one, you have to ask yourself these fundamental questions. What do I want from life? What do I want from life? If we're talking about life, what do you want from your relationships? What do you want from your family? What do you want from your relationship with your spouse or partner? What do you want? How do you want your relationship with your kids to be? What do you want from how do you want your journey of self-development and taking care of your mind, of your health, of your soul, right, of your spiritual dimension? What do you want from that? What do you want how do you want to regulate your relationship with society? Do you want to make contribution or not? What's the nature of your contribution? So all these pillars of life, you have to have answers to what you want from them. At the same time, going to the business side, you have to have answers on what you want from business and how you want your business to look like. How do you want your business to look like? What's your view to the future? Do you have clarity on which direction you want to go? So first you have to have clarity on these things. What do I want from life? Really in details. I mean, not micro details, but you have to look at the pillars of life and ask yourself, in considering that the nature of life is hard, it's difficult, right? Look at people around you. Everybody is carrying their own quote unquote cross, as people say, right, in some culture. So look at people around you and look at your life and make decisions, because you have limited resources and you limited time. So do you have clarity on that? Do you have clarity on what you want on your business? That's number one. Number two, do you have a clear interpretation of what's the nature of your current reality, or are you living in an illusion? Do you have the courage to really look your reality in the eye and say, this is the nature of my reality. If I continue like this now, I will end up in this place. Because if I look where I have been and I see where I am now, and most likely if I continue as it is, I will go in that direction. The third question, considering all the stupidity that you and I do, considering all the foolishness that we're doing, considering all the stupid decisions and actions that we do that are creating unnecessary mess in our life, and unnecessary mess in our businesses. Considering that, right? Because all of us sometimes do something that's foolish. We regret the doing later. We do things that increases the amount of suffering by adding unnecessary pain, unnecessary complexity to business, by doing mistakes. Now, the third question is, if I worst case scenario continue to go deeper in the foolishness that I'm doing, worst case scenario, whatever it is, and you and I do know that. If you ask yourself, if you wake up in the morning and sit on the bed, at the side of your bed, and ask yourself, what are the foolish things that I'm doing, that I seem to continue doing, that's creating mess in my life? If you draw a scenario where you go deeper and deeper and deeper in that, because some people do, where would that leave you? So you have three scenarios. What do you want from life? What do you want from business? So that's your aspiration, let's say. What's your current reality, right? If things go like they are now, where will you end up? Number three is, if worst case scenario happens, and for many people, unfortunately, worst case scenario does happen, where would I end up? So you have these three pictures, and then you make a decision. If your decision is no, I'm not going to allow myself to continue acting foolishly, creating unnecessary mess in my family, my relationships, my health, my personal life, my business, right? I'm not going to go that direction. Definitely, I don't want, because that is another manifestation of your personal hell, self-manufactured hell. Number one. Number two, I am not happy with the way things are going because I can do much better. I can do much better. I can become the person that I could become. I am more than this. I can do much better than I am now. My reality can become better. And I know I can do that because it's true that life is suffering and life is not easy and life is painful and business is also hard. However, this is half the story. The remaining half of the story is that, but we are amazing creatures. We continue to surprise ourselves in our amazing capacity of resilience, right? Of coping with all this difficult nature of life, right? Of coping with all this, the natural suffering, of overcoming our weaknesses and stupidity and foolishness, and learning and gaining wisdom, right? So that we can become, so that we can become better tomorrow and even better after tomorrow and after tomorrow. And that's called, and that's called learning, right? So there is also that as part of reality. So if you decide that you expect better from yourself, can you fix this? If you decide that you can expect better from yourself on the personal level, right? You expect better from yourself on a professional level, right? On a corporate level, on a business level, then that will not happen by itself, my friend. You need to do something about it. And the beginning, the first step or the second step after deciding the kind of reality that you want to create is to design the right strategy. Because without strategy, i.e. without making the big choices, without having at least an overview of the direction that you want to make, you're not going anywhere. And people who don't know where they're going, they're called lost. And to be lost is not a nice thing. It's full of stress and anxiety and pain, right? And it's not nice, right? Now add to that you have limited time on this earth and limited resources in your company and limited budget and limited money, right? And limited opportunities, then the level of urgency becomes higher. So that's, my friends, the context of strategy that I've been talking about. That's why I called it beyond strategy, because it's not really about the tactical aspect of strategy. It is not just about that. It is about how do you think and act properly? How do you make the right choices so that your journey of survival and growth goes beyond just endurance, but into a situation where you can say, I have overcome, I run the race and I have won, and I have my body is full of scars, but it was worth it. It was meaningful. It was worth every effort that I've made, right? And if I had a chance, I'll do it again.
All right, Michael, I'm going to intervene because we know it's a Michael Cooley seminar when we begin by discussing the nature of being itself, and that's our starting point. We know who we're talking to today. Also, we have limited resources and so on, and I want to make sure that no one's lost in our seminar also. I see quite a lot of questions that have come in, and I'm going to do us a service by trying to shape some of them to launch us into the next phase of our discussion. So you have given us a rich overview about two things. First of all, about how we learn and change. So something's got to change even as we're working in our organization in order to develop it, maybe to change our notion of purpose, our ends, and the rest of it. The values, perhaps, that underscore our strategy may change or not. On the other hand, you have given the example of trying to set up a strategy for life. Let's talk about trying to set up a strategy for organizations, which more of us understand, for example, like a business. Let's talk about the currency, what we're trying to achieve. I know that you're going to tell us we're going to try to achieve a larger purpose to our company. I want to know about that. But a lot of us are struggling with the fact that we're just trying to get our business to survive. And I want to understand the difference between tactics and strategy in making financial health for our companies. One thing that you say, a provocative thing that you start off your whole book talking about, is that money will come as a result of creating value. In other words, I'm even quoting, if you want money, you must learn not to be fixated on it. Your strategy in a business has to be more than just that currency. Yet that is the currency which for most people is the ultimate aim of our strategy. So I've asked you, or people are asking, 3 or 4 different questions. One is this: how do you do it? Can I believe that if I don't, in my business, if I don't focus on my main goal, which is trying to make enough money to survive, I can do that by focusing on value instead? Secondly, what is the star on which I hook my strategy? Is it just my values, my purpose, or what? Can you give us a sense of that? And then we're going to have to talk about the execution of it. So try now to put these ideas, if you don't mind. Let's get to the meat of your book and talk about what are we undergirding? What are we hooking our strategy to?
Okay, number one, when I talk about strategy, I don't distinguish a lot between, the book is mainly uses some business examples. But the reason I expanded in my introduction to talk about something bigger than business, because when I talk about strategy, it's bigger than business, because if the way you think about business also reflects the way you think about life. So strategy is the way you think, reflects the way you're thinking. So strategic thinking in running your organization is a reflection of the level of seriousness and the kind of responsibility and the way you handle business, which is also a mirror in some cases, or should be a mirror, maybe it is a mirror of the way you handle other aspects of life, because it's a reflection of the way you think and the level of your seriousness and the way your brain, methodologically functions. Now, go back to your specific questions about, the business aspect of this and the money issue. It is one of the most common comment I get is that we are in the business to make money. In fact, sometimes I often hear this from CEOs, and maybe you've heard this from me before. My very blunt, shocking answer is always, then what makes you different from a prostitute? Because a prostitute also makes money. So if you are in the business to make money, so everybody goes to his grandmother. She says, "What do you do?" I said, "I make money." Is this what you say to your grandmother? So your grandmother asks you, "Son, what do you do?" What do you tell her? "Grandma, I make money." Is this an answer? So then, so if you're in the business of making money, so then my question is, how much money are you making? What's your return on investment? Then they say, okay, 10%, 11%. I said, listen, why don't you go to selling arms? It's legal. You can make 200%. So if what you really want is to make money, so they, you become you become an investment banker. Think about money. Money is very important. Money is like blood. Without blood, you die, but you don't live for your blood. You use your blood to stay alive, to become healthier and to function more and to fulfill your purpose and by living a meaningful life. So do you need money? Absolutely, you need money. Without money, it's like oxygen. You suffocate, but you don't live for your oxygen. And from a business point of view, planning a business, think about money is also not very smart, because you're trying to control something that's uncontrollable. Because guess what? The money that you have in your forecast, in your budget for next year, is sitting in the pockets of your clients. It's in their account, their bank account. Now, unless you plan to steal a bank, I don't think it will move from their account, or to hack into a banking system. It will not move from their bank account to your bank account. They have to press the button, and they decide that, when they go to a supermarket and they look at the shelf and they see 50 or 60 products that deliver exactly the same commodity almost, because everything is becoming commodity, they have to decide that your brand, your name deserves to be chosen, and everybody else, despite their advertisements and huge campaigns and the positioning and all the rest, they're all going to be ignored because you're the one who deserves it. Now, you can do that, but you need to make sure that you have provided them with a very strong and solid justification, so that they choose you among everybody else. Because whatever it is you're doing, it is very unlikely that you're the only person who does that. And no matter how smart you are and you have this brilliant idea, I can assure you that 7.7 billion people also are scratching their head every day trying to think about the same subject, and probably they're ahead of you, right? Or they have the same idea, but they're working they are like 200% more than you are, and they haven't taken the vacations for, I don't know, years. And they have more courage, and they have more resources, and they're trying things. Anyway, so my point is, you want money? Fine. Of course you have to have money. Otherwise, you die, and otherwise you can't expand and grow. But the only thing you control to have money is what you can control, and that's the product and the service that you do. I.e., the only thing that you can control is adding value to people. So focusing on money will take you nowhere because it's diffusing your energy on the wrong place. It's taking it to the wrong place. You only focus on doing what you're supposed to do, which is providing your people with value, and you make that your obsession. I like Amazon's success story, and I like what Jeff Bezos always says. He says, we are obsessive compulsive about customer service. We don't care about money. We are absolutely pathological when it comes to our obsession with customer service, because it's only through customer service you get customer loyalty, and only through customer loyalty you get the money. So is money important? Yes, but don't think about it. It's like running. You want to win a marathon, you don't think about running. You don't think about winning. You think about putting every single ounce of energy and calories in every step you make. So
Okay.
that's my.
But Michael, who are our people? Who are our people? You say you have to think about your people first, but who are our people? You're focused on the customer. Bezos in that quote is focused on the customer. Your book is focused on the customer. But a lot of people, I think, in this webinar would say, what about my employees? Aren't they
everybody.
my people?
No, not only employees. Your people are everybody who forms the constellation of your business universe, including your number one, your clients. Without your clients, you're nobody. But without your client, your customer, and without your employees, you have no customers, right? Without your employees, you have no customers, and without customers, you don't have employees, right? Because you don't have money to pay your employees. So definitely your employees, definitely your customers, definitely your shareholders, definitely your suppliers, definitely the community that you are embedded in, definitely what else? I don't know, the organizations that the government organizations that constitute the laws and regulations. So anybody who is in part of your universe and contributes directly or indirectly to your universe, to your business, to the continuity of your business, that's your people.
Okay.
Including your family at home, because without your support, you can't go home. You can't go to work.
All right. But these, I'm sorry, I'm asking, again, I'm getting some questions coming in, so I'm going to try to sum up for the questions and say this. We're talking about stakeholders. So my question was, which stakeholders comes first, the customer or the employee? But some people are pointing out here that healthy growth, you say, is supposed to benefit all stakeholders. That's great, but actually, typically, there are trade-offs. You talk about some of these in your later chapters. Some people gain, some people lose. So how does that square with your definition? Can you still try to give us some priorities? It's great to benefit all stakeholders, but we've got to do it in a certain order. Can you speak to that? Because that's going to be part of your strategy.
Of course. Now, you keep that in mind all the time. But you don't, but you have to, I mean, you have to manage the business. That's what it's called managing. So it's not that you're stuck in squares. You have to shuffle things from time to time. Not every year organizations distribute dividends to their shareholders. They don't do that every year. Sometimes they decide that, for 2 or 3 years, no dividends. The money has to be injected back into the organization. Not every year employees get salary increases. Not every every year you increase the prices. So you have to look at the entire picture and see, considering the limited resources that you have, how can you organize your state of being, right? Considering the economy around you and the competition and the nature of your industry, so that everybody is going forward. Maybe not in the same speed, because we don't live in an ideal world, but everybody has to go forward. In the way we were in I have managed companies, in fact. In my last job, I was managing a conglomerate of 7 companies. In one of the organizations, salaries were not paid for 6 months. In some organizations, salaries were not paid for 1 year. I mean, I know this is shocking for some of our listeners, our viewers, but that was the case. And people who were loyal took it. And they went through this hardship, and the company did not forget that. And when things turned and financing was back on track, they were not only giving back their due salaries, but they were generously rewarded. Generously, it was more than worth it. So what I'm saying is, it an ideal situation where everybody gets the equal share, all the time? It doesn't work like this. The reality is not like this. Sometimes you have to move in different with different speeds. Now, which one is more important? This is like saying, which one is more important, my right hand or my left hand, my left leg or my right leg, my left lung or right lung, my eyes or my heart? It doesn't work like this. It takes an entire system with so many elements to move this entity that's called business move forward, all of it. So with whatever resources you have, using your wisdom, considering the situation, you have to make sure that you're pushing them all in the, forward. Maybe not in the same speed, but at least you always demonstrate loyalty and commitment to all of them.
All right, but what's growth? I have a question here. What is growth in this case? You keep talking about moving forward and growing and so on, but what is this growth mindset which you have in mind? Is this just as in the phrase survive and grow, or are you talking about growth in a certain way? You explain what leadership is. You don't explain in your book so much what this growth mindset is. Can you tell me about that?
Growth is a relative word because it depends on what every person wants. But at least the fundamentals of the word is that growth is about becoming better. It's about, today we're better than yesterday and tomorrow we're going to be better. So what do employees need? What does growth mean for employees? Growth means for employees stronger job security, better income, a more enriched career path, more share in the a bigger share in the success of the organization, feeling that you are part of this, having a better working environment. That's growth for an employee. For an investor, somebody who's sitting somewhere in a different country who has contributed money, right? You don't see him, but without his money, nothing would have happened. For him, growth is financial because he's, return on investment. That's what he's expecting. Now, for some people, that money does not mean anything. For them, it's the moral thing, is that because they have their stake in this is emotional. So for them is, don't worry about giving me back my money. Now I don't want profit for the next 2 or 3 days. What you're doing is far more important. What I see from your growth is that it's giving me what I want, which is emotional satisfaction, because I believe in this case. You see? Now, that's why for suppliers, what's growth for suppliers? Hello? Can you see me?
Yes.
Okay, because it disappeared. For suppliers, what growth is to giving them more business, is to giving them paying them money, whenever, when you buy things from them. For the bank, what's growth is borrowing more from them and being more punctual and more committed to the way you pay back your debt. So it depends. Each person, each stakeholder in the organization is expecting something, and growth means whatever you're expecting, you're moving forward along those lines.
Okay. But so you're talking very personally. You've talked about emotions. You've talked about the customer experience, such as how people feel. You've also noticed the fact that the world is uncertain, and so things have unexpected consequences. Put that into the context of a wonderful question I have here from our friends in Indonesia, who ask, how relevant is strategy, in fact, because a lot of it can change by the difference of one new person comes on the team, and suddenly the customer feels good about dealing with that person, and suddenly everything improves for a very personal, human reason that, ironically, despite all of your plans for growth, and somehow suddenly your customer starts coming to you because they like to see that person working on your team rather than that person. The strategy hasn't changed at all, but the whole customer experience has changed, and the whole fate of your company has changed because of something which is almost unseeable and unplannable. How do you fit that into a strategy model?
That's a great question, because here it's exactly where leadership comes into this. Because even if you have the absolute best strategy, but if you don't exercise the proper leadership, right, that is required to put this strategy into smart execution, right, and make sure that the decisions that are taken to construct the strategy, number one. Number two, to put the strategy into action is wise and well thought of. That's why I said strategy without leadership is doomed, and leadership without strategy is going nowhere. Now, when people talk about strategy, so to answer your question, do mistakes happen sometimes even when you have a smart strategy or a strategy that's agreed upon? Of course it happens, but that is a consequence not of a bad strategy, of bad leadership, of a leadership that is not wise enough. So sometimes it's not the mistake of a strategy itself, because it's absolutely brilliant. It makes perfect sense, and if there's just enough power and push behind it to make it happen, it will yield the required result. But if it is, even when you have the best car, lousy driver, you will have accidents. So these things happen. Now, the second point is people misunderstand sometimes what strategy is. Strategy is about choices. So I have money, limited resources. Now, if you take the word limited resources, the word strategy loses half of its value. What makes strategy so important is that you have limited resources. I have $10 million. That's all. That's the maximum I can get. Now, when I talk about strategies, how do I best invest my $10 million? Do I invest in women's clothing or do I invest in men's clothing? Do I invest in casual wear or in formal wear? Do I invest in children's clothing or do I invest in pregnant women clothing? These are the strategic choices that I'm talking about. That's what strategy is all about. Do we stay in Malaysia or in Thailand or Sri Lanka, or do we go to the entire subcontinent? Do we jump to start a business in America now, right? Or do we stay where we are? Strategy is about the macro, big choices that you have to make, considering that you have limited resources. Now, after you've made these choices, and they are the macro choices that will consume most of your resources, then you go to the tactical planning of how do you see this unfold. You see what I'm saying? So changing a person here or there are a very important part in the implementation of all this. But when we talk about strategy as it's scientifically defined, strategy is about the macro, big choices that you take considering the limited resource. What do you want to do with your life? You have 15 more years left of your professional, let's say, career life. What do you want to do with that? That's a strategic choice. Where do you want to live? That's a strategic choice. Do you want to get married or be single? That's a strategic choice. Do you stay? Do you go? Do you go into 3-star hotels or do you go into 5-star hotels? When you talk about strategy, it's those kind of questions that you have to ask. And these are the fundamental questions, because as I said, they consume all your resources. Now, what comes after that moves more into the tactical step. So we've decided that we're going to invest in the hospitality business, going only for 3-star hotels, because that's what the market needs now. Then we go tactically. Okay, how do we start? How do we do 3-star hotels? That's completely different chapter. But at least we've made our choices. That the only $50 million that we have, right, that we can't lose, because if we lose it, that's it. It's finished. We're doomed for 10 years because we tell us 10, 15 years to pay back the money. And that will mean that we've lost 10 or 15 years of opportunity, and you don't have it for eternity to live, right? And the market is not going to wait for you. You pay a huge price. That's why when I made the introduction about, this macro introduction about strategy, I put it in this great perspective, this large perspective, and I called my book Beyond Strategy, because you're not just talking about strategy. You're talking about making the grand choices that will decide the nature of your life and your business in a reality that has mercy. Competition has no mercy for you. The jungle has no mercy. Planet Earth has, from the 10th floor to the floor, gravity has no mercy or exceptions. So you have to make your choices in this reality.
Right, right. I have a question sort of about that, which I'm going to quote. It's nicely formulated from Pakistan by Haris. Thank you. He says, how do you handle uncertainty and disruption, even when you are working hard and have a strategy in place?
Okay. The answer to that is that, my friend, the nature of life is uncertainty and disruption. The nature of life. I'll just give you an example, a personal example, if you don't mind me to. Something happened with us 2 months ago, a month ago. I don't know if you've heard. We lost my mother. Now, at home, the person who is, that we were thinking about or we were concerned about was my dad, right? Was my dad. That's what our attention was. Suddenly, in 2 days, my mom disappeared. Life happens. That's life. You sit at home and you're planning your whatever, your wedding or your son's wedding, and tsunami hits, an earthquake hits, the economy collapsed. So if you argue with the nature of reality, reality always wins. The nature of life is uncertainty. Now, not everything. Sometimes, it's all relative. But to think that, to assume that you're operating in a context where everything's under control and there are no surprises, you better fasten your seatbelt, because life I'm telling you, life will surprise you. So you have to make uncertainty your friend. And I have learned this a long time ago, 20, 30 years ago. I've told myself, I'm going to make uncertainty my friend, because I cannot afford to remain in anxiety and stress, right? Every time my life goes through uncertainty. Maybe I learned that because I came from I come from the Middle East. I lived in a state of war, so that's the default nature of my reality, and it's not very far from everywhere else. It's not, security uncertainty. It's not war, is economic. It's not economic, is health. It's not health, is personal. It's not personal, is relational. So how do you manage that? You have to accept it, number one. Number two is that you have to be strong enough to handle it. So when uncertainty happens, you have to remind yourself of your priority, of your purpose, and you have to stay on your feet. And you have to remind yourself that it's not only about you, it's also about the people around you, and that your obligation towards yourself, towards being alive, towards being a human being, which is a great honor because it implies unlimited, or if not unlimited, amazing abilities of resilience, of creativity, of strength, of endurance, right? Of mental capacity, of ability to find solutions, right? So being part of that species also gives you responsibilities and gives you hope. So you have to remind yourself that I have to, in the middle of this uncertainty, stand straight, right? Become a pillar that would hold everybody around, whether it's a family or a company or organization or whatever it is. And through that uncertainty, we'll see either how we find our way, find some clarity, or, you know what, instead of panicking, let's just look around us and see what if there are opportunities. Sometimes earthquakes happen and the earth cracks, and out of the cracks, sometimes, oil comes out. Sometimes you discover gold. Sometimes beautiful things happen. So when uncertainty happens and life goes into chaos, there are two forces. Number one is, how do we restore order, right? So that at least the minimum level of stability of our continuity is maintained. And that's your responsibility, especially if we talk about the context of leadership. Even if your legs are shaking, you have no choice but to stand up and be the strongest person in the company and the department, in your family, in society, wherever your universe is, right? And give people hope. That's number one. So that life continues with minimum possible order and equilibrium. Number two is, wait a minute, what if this uncertainty and chaos and the unexpected things that happen offer opportunity? What can we learn from this? Maybe this offers new potential. Maybe this, we're looking at things we haven't considered in the past. So that's also a possibility. And
right, but Michael, wait. Let's crystallize this, because you're trying to thread a circle. On the one hand, we're very powerful. On the one hand, in the face of so much uncertainty, we're powerless. So I'm going to give a shout out to Jerry here. Look at this. He asks, then which is most important? Should I have a clear objective and then go flexible on the approach? Or is it more important to have a clear objective and make a full-blown cover all the angles strategy to guide us to achieve the objective? In other words, basically, if life is so full of surprises, why do we need a strategy?
Because that's exactly, because you need a North Star, my friend. When there is a storm in the sea, the only thing that will save you is a North Star. You need to have a North Star. I don't know if you remember, if you've seen the movie Apollo 13, where everything collapsed. The only thing that got them back to Earth is to see planet Earth from the window of the capsule where they're floating in the universe. And they said all the systems were down. Said, okay, point the direction there. That's where we're going. So in every situation, in chaos or no chaos, to go through life, right? To make life worthwhile, in spite of its suffering and pain and difficulties, to make business worthwhile in spite of its challenges, you need to have meaning. The only thing that can justify business and life and all the effort that you put into it is meaning. Now, where does meaning come from? From having a clear sense of purpose. That's why I keep talking about purpose. The purpose of purpose is to give meaning. So when you have meaning and when you have a clear purpose, the rest is process. The rest is, is dynamics that you have to adapt to, right? As the situation changes, so that you maintain your focus. So wherever no matter how the situation in the ocean changes when you're sailing, you never ever compromise looking at the North Star. You never compromise. Sometimes you have to maneuver the waves. Sometimes you have to stand still. Sometimes you have to go backward. Sometimes you have to U-turn. But you never ever forget that you have an ultimate purpose that gives you meaning, that is the essence that justifies not only your life because it gives it weight and it makes all the difficulties of life worthwhile, but also gives your business identity, gives your business something to justify that, to motivate you for more success, and something to justify that you're going to go through the effort of dealing with everyday challenges and sometimes handle, depressions and surprises and unexpected problems. So without meaning, listen, I have been reading research recently, and that's going to be a subject of a new book I'm working on. The research says probably one of the deepest instinct that we have, it's instinctive, is our instinct for meaning. It is the strongest instinct. And if I had time, maybe in a future seminar, I could talk more about how deep this goes into the essence of who we are. Our brain has the cortex that gives us rationale. Meaning goes to the most deepest part of our brain that's like 350 million years old. So if you want an anchor in your personal life, if you want anchor in your family life, if you want an anchor in your business life, you have to develop a meaning that will make you say, this is our priority, and whatever happens, it's worthwhile because it's justified, and all the effort and all the pain is nothing compared to what we're trying to do.
Yes, but I have a nice challenge to you from an SIBF friend who points out that the end of your book the last stage of your book does raise the possibility that your uniqueness and your purpose may change. And in fact, given that you are talking about complex adaptive systems, some people argue that maybe safe to fail interventions, small multiple interventions, are actually preferable over grand strategies exactly because of the uncertainties which you're pointing out. That would actually negate the value of grand strategies and argue for a flexible approach of many interventions with the understanding that even your uniqueness and purpose can change over time. What about that?
Okay, I understand that. Number one, you cannot do without grand strategies. Now, listen, the word grand strategy is a big word. Forget about grand strategy. Talk about grand choices. My friend, you have to do a business, right? You need to make decisions. You need capital. So you want to make a decision which state you have to start your business with. What kind of industry? How much money you're going to invest? These are grand choices. When I talk about strategy, I talk about these grand choices. You cannot start something without grand choices. Now, do you need to make corrections along the way as you make this happen, as you're designing the strategy, and as you're implementing the strategy in the phase of execution? Every single day, every day, I wake up in the morning, I look at the BBC and ask myself, has our world changed today? To what extent what I'm reading today makes our reality different? I read the business news and then the political news every single day. Maybe it has become a habit since I was, a journalist with Reuters. So every single day you wake up in the morning, go to your office and ask yourself, whatever we're doing now, considering the reality that I just read about in the newspaper and I read about and saw on news, is what we're doing, the grand plan that we're having, the way we're doing things, the way we're handling the business now, does it still stand? Does it still make sense? Is it still the best option? If it is yes, considering what you know now about today, continue. If not, definitely 100% do fine tuning. Every single day you have to do fine tuning. And if there were dramatic shifts in your reality and you need to throw your entire strategy in the garbage, then you do that. Because in that sense, strategy is just a process for a larger purpose, which is your continuity, right? So you discover that the whole thing changes. The whole thing changes. You discovered there's a baby now. Hello. Hello. Adam.
All right, sorry about that.
Okay.
I have
one more point. So what matters is not the strategy per se, because it's not, you know, art for the sake of art. It's the ultimate purpose and meaning that your strategy has to, or your big choices have to serve. I'll give an example. My brother, I'll find the liberty now of, I use the liberty of using him as an example. He lives in Canada and he had grand plans. You know, he's into risk management and all the stuff. And he was going in certain directions, you know, saying, and he had a clear strategy. He will take that degree and work complete big thing for his career. You know, it was a successful career. Suddenly he's faced with a new reality. They have a son that, you know, the child is born to them, right? And their son has some serious medical conditions. Now, I mean, very serious medical conditions. I mean, serious, right? And long term, maybe for life. So his reality completely changed now. Everything, the whole plans, everything has been planning for, even invested for years, right, in the design that he was making for his future, completely changed now. Why? Because his priorities changed now. The purpose changed. And here I come to the issue of purpose. Do we have a purpose? Yes, there is an ultimate purpose, and that is to survive and grow, right? To know how to handle life, right? To be strong enough to endure life and to live a meaning life, and to create as many moments of happiness and joy that you can do, and to do as much good as you can do in life. That's the ultimate purpose. That's why we're here. We're here to do good. We're here to endure life, and we're here to say, have no fear, for I have overcome life. That's what you need to do, right? That's the grand one. Now on the smaller scale, right, you have many other priorities. So there is a smaller sort of division, a smaller branch of purpose that says, I have also a grand purpose of taking care of my family, because there is a reality. You have a wife and you have kids. So what are they? A secondary element? No. So your also purpose is ultimate. I mean, this very important purpose on that level is to raise good kids and make sure that you have a happy home. On the professional level, there you have an organization that also exists for a certain purpose, and that also provides its purpose. So we have a grand purpose, right, which is to be strong enough, as we are by default, right, to handle the difficult nature of life and to make it a meaningful life, and to do as much good as we can to improve the human condition and enjoy our journey, our adventure, and make it worthwhile. Division into that are different purposes that we find are, you know, that are related to the pillars of our life. And our challenge is to make sure that we are making headway on all these levels, considering the nature of life that is unpredictable, uncertain, right? And full of challenges, suffering, and also considering the greater reality that we are more than equipped to handle this difficult nature of life, so that we create a story of resilience, of success, right? And not only that, of inspiration for everybody around us.
All right, so there's a comment here I would like to throw in. I don't know if you want to answer it, Michael, but something which others would like to consider. It is from Irfan, and it's a good comment. He points out that maybe John King's why strategy model, which many of us in our leadership academies have studied, might be the practical and structural tool best suited to implement your high-level beyond strategy goal. I don't know if you want to talk about that, but or we can comment on this in the comment section. But I just want to point out, it is in American time, it's 10:03. However, it is a venerable tradition in our academies that Michael Cooley always runs a bit late. So with that, I invite anybody who can't make it to sign off, but I am going to keep this going for another 15 minutes for anybody who'd like to discuss this. So friends, it's at your discretion, but we're going to go for another 10, 15 minutes.
I like my friend John King's model.
Right.
The John King's model is a model. It's an underlying word model. It's a model to handle some steps of implementing a strategy. It's a strategy model, right? And there are many models of that. So if John King's model works for you, do that. The book that I have that we're talking about has a model that I call the purpose-driven growth model. I don't know if you can see it from here. Is it visible? Can you see it?
Yes.
Okay. So it is the purpose-driven growth model, because And the reason I called it growth, because the ultimate purpose of every strategy is to grow wherever grow is for that. And there are 7 steps, starting by defining your uniqueness. Then it goes into based on your uniqueness, i.e., what your interest, what interests you, and what added value, what special added value you are best equipped to provide, to offer. Right, that's your uniqueness, your main assets, your expertise, whatever the thing that you do best. Then after you do that, you define your purpose based on your uniqueness. Then based on that, you design a strategy, i.e., a roadmap that will turn your purpose into an actual existence. A roadmap that will make your purpose a reality, right? And then after you do your strategy, you have to look inward and ask yourself, am I really, really ready to apply this strategy? Am I psychologically ready in terms of mentality, mindset, spirit, soul, right? To apply the strategy? Do I have the right physical things? Do I have the right money? Do I have money, resources, people? So there's the physiology and there's the psychology of this. There's the tangible and the intangible thing. So you look inside yourself and you ask yourself, what are my strengths and weaknesses, assets and liabilities irrelevant to the strategy that I have designed? Because if you have the best strategy and you're not designed, you're not ready to apply it, then it will fail. So after you look inside and you do diagnostics, you fix whatever needs to be fixing. Wherever it needs to be preserved, you preserve. Whenever it needs to be acquired, you acquire. And whenever needs to be fixing, you fix it so that you have a better chance of applying the strategy. Because strategy without execution has no meaning. It's just you're dreaming, you're daydreaming. And then you execute. And then you actually have to execute brilliantly. Now, who execute? They have to be the best people who can execute. So if and it has to be, of course, all aligned. So saying that people who execute are different from people who are having strategy, maybe at some level it's true, because some people have to do the work in the field and some people have to do other kind of work. But in general, everybody has to be aligned, and everybody has to talk to everybody, and everybody has to give feedback to everybody, and everybody has to keep each other informed and monitor and give reactions and maybe do corrections. So everybody has to be involved in execution from their own point of from their own angle, but they have to execute brilliantly, because bad execution will kill even the best strategy. And even after you've done that and you've brilliantly executed, because life is a state of flux, because things are changing all the time, you are changing, market is changing, client is changing, resources are changing, taste is changing, demographics are changing, everything is changing. Absolutely everything is changing. You have to remain adaptive, right? What does that adaptive mean? Means if you have to, you go back to your strategy again and you design a new strategy. I did not say you go back to your purpose, because you can't change your industry every single day. You can't do that, because you already invested all the money that you have and the limited resources, and you already have no longer commitment, right, to pay your debts and all the money that you have borrowed. And even if you have money to start a new business, right, you need time. So you can't change that every day. So you remain adaptive, but when things change, you go back to the design phase and you redesign your strategy according to the new given, so that you're always in touch with reality and you continue the same cycle again. Does that make sense? So that's the model. That's the model that I talk about, and this is based on listen. One of the biggest checks I've signed 2 big checks in my life. One of them, my hands were shaking. It was $250 million, and I really, my hands were shaking, because I said, if this goes wrong, the board will hang me. Are you with me? Because I lost the. Can you see me?
Yes, we are with you.
Okay, so that was one. The second one was $40 million to one of the major consulting companies. So I've seen all of that, and I've tried all these big ones. Now, having said all of that, there are things that work and things that didn't work. In my personal experience, and I like always to be practical, right, and to put things in the larger context, this works for me, and I've made it as simple as possible, so that it doesn't intimidate anybody. On purpose, I made it as simple as possible, so that this misunderstanding and this fear that comes with this word strategy is no more, and people start understanding this important concept and take themselves seriously and take their mental capacity seriously and their wisdom, so that they can plan their journey of life, whether personally and professionally, in the most possible intelligent way. And that's what I mean, when I call beyond strategy.
Okay, so when you talked about the execution, I have a question here. I want to go back to that again because nothing works unless the strategy has been well executed. So is it done best top down? Or because you say or all the stakeholders should be involved. That's a whole system approach.
Everybody should be involved in their own way, but not everybody is. When you go to execution, Adam, you're talking about the strategy now into small mini projects, you know, middle-sized project, mini projects. So it becomes like a tree. So the strategy is the trunk, and then you go into the branches and the smaller branches and smaller branches. So and each one of these tasks needs relevant skills to be done. So common sense says that you have to prepare the right people with the right skills so that they can accomplish each part of the execution in the right way. Let's take a shuttle, let's say airspace, you know, the shuttle that goes to space. It has 23,000 moving parts, 23,000 moving parts, right? So two things should happen. Number one, each one of these parts have to be executed absolutely perfectly. Otherwise, you get the disaster that happened when you know one of the shuttles blew up. It was one element, one single one out of the 23. One component wasn't done properly, had a malfunction. It destroyed, you know, the damage beyond recognition on so many levels. One of them. So each one of these parts in the execution has to be done by the competent people. Number one. Number two. Imagine if the makers of all these 23,000 components don't talk to each other, right? Imagine if Imagine if the makers of the Boeing 737, now it's a bad airplane. Imagine if the makers of 777, they don't talk to each other. Would you ever go into that plane? So no. So everybody has to be involved, taking their part of the execution, provided they are the right competent people, but they have to talk to each other, not top down. I don't like top down. It's a systemic thing. So there's no directional issue. There's no horizontal or lateral. Everything, it's a network. Everybody have to talk to everybody else in the most functional way, just like in an orchestra. Stay with me. Just like in an orchestra. All the layers have to come together so that a beautiful meaning is created. And that's where leadership comes into the play. That's why leadership is so important. Take out brilliant leadership. Strategy becomes a nightmare.
So the final question then, just to understand it then, the question is, the astronauts did not design the shuttle. Yes. Are the people who execute the same people who should be part of creating the strategy? Or can some people create the strategy and other people execute it? That's what we want to know.
Ideally, I don't like these kind of separations because you are throwing away wisdom and knowledge. So everybody who can contribute, they should have a say into this, but of course it has to be organized. So are you telling me, is it smart for people who sit in a head office in God knows where, in the 75th floor, who have never been into the market or the factory, who come from different disciplines of life, they should design the product for a market that's 10,000 miles away? I'm telling you, this is stupid. I mean, how can anybody think like that? So everybody, whoever has a say in making the product better, should be there. Starting by, you know, the entire chain. From the user side, not only, listen, the client also has to be part of this. Not only your thing, not only your own direct universe, your direct employees. The user itself also. That's why you have focus groups and you have other groups. That's why you have experts. That's why you have advisors. So everybody in their own way, because everybody brings their own perspective, so that the purpose of the product, of the service, or the strategy is fulfilled. But that can only happen if you have proper leadership. Somebody has to provide, to create that kind of culture, and somebody has to orchestrate all this activity so that whatever comes out is a brilliant thing. So I don't like top-down levels, left, right, and center. It is a systemic thing. Look at it as a globe made up of fisherman's net, you know? It is all connected. So from every point of it, every node is a center. Because if you hold every node and pull, the entire thing will be pulled, right? There's no center in this. So everybody can contribute in their own way, as I said, and it's the job of leadership to orchestrate that so that it becomes a symphony. Otherwise, it will be distortion. It will be noise.
And friends, thank you. I'm going to wrap up our seminar. I feel that perhaps Michael was playing the role of the conductor today, but I heard your voices today as the instruments, and I think that maybe we had some beautiful music. I think that we're going to have this recorded for other people who missed the rich discussion today. Michael, I invite you to make a short closing statement or a goodbye, a wave. You can sing a song, and then we'll wrap up our CELA webinar for today.
Number one, thank you. It has been an honor. I love seeing your picture. It has been a long time. Unfortunately, we meet every academy, but the next one is soon. My love to the entire CELA community and everybody who's there. Thank you so much. Thank you for your time. It's an honor that you gave us all this time of your attention. My closing statement is, it's not about strategy, it's beyond strategy. And what's beyond strategy is how do we make sure that our journey in life, considering that the reality of life, the real reality of life, not the fantasy, you know, not the what's his name? Peter Pan world. We're not talking about that world. The reality of life as you all know it, if you go deep, inspect your life, the reality of life that's full of challenges and difficulties and sometimes pain, suffering, sometimes unnecessary, and that the reality of business, which is an important part of our life, very important part of life, is taken seriously, right? And that we take it so seriously that we think about it and we try to design it in the best possible way, right? And that's strategic thinking, so that our journey in this life, right, with whatever it entails from sacrifices and suffering, and also beautiful moments, right, and lots of gratitude, and moments of happiness and beauty, right, makes it all worthwhile. And that will not come by coincidence. It needs serious work. And I see zero separation between business and other aspects of life, because it's about how you approach things. It's just different aspects of life, and they're all interrelated. So life is serious, but it's worth it. It's worth the journey.
Thank you, Michael. Friends, this is the spirit of CELA, and I think the other leadership academies. It's open, it's challenging, it's practical, and for all of you, I'm going to make our pitch to join us for our next CELA, which is going to be in January in Sri Lanka. Michael, I gather, will be with us. We'll have many other speakers and many other conversations of this ilk on this level. So go out and spread the good news that CELA is going to continue conversations on this level in Sri Lanka. We'll have another webinar coming up in about a month, I believe, which I encourage you all to join. And I thank you, Michael, for your time, your thoughts, your wisdom, your values, and your kindness. And everybody, you're still all muted, but let's have a wave. And thank you so much for joining us today. Michael, we salute you.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Goodbye, everybody.